Half-Life 2, the predecessor to the critically acclaimed video game and its DLC, released on the 16th of November 2004 and is known for receiving overwhelmingly positive reviews and scores from players and critics. It is known today to be a massive influence indirectly for later games such as Dishonored and Bioshock in many ways, such as its use of innovative motion and voice capture and storytelling aspects along with other technical aspects which pertain to the game engine it runs on, called Source. Physics, high-def graphics, etc. But what many people don't know about was the devastating leak a year prior to the game's release. On October 2nd, 2003, a German hacker named Axel Gambay hacked into Valve's internal network with ease. An interesting article which goes into the nitty-gritty about how Gambay broke into the Valve network will be listed in the description. Gambay was caught after Valve pretended to agree to have a job interview with him, which revealed his name and some details about him. Soon after, the police arrested him, and he spent 2 weeks in custody and 2 years on probation, as he was only 20 years old and he admitted to the crime. The details are relatively shaky. Story differences. As there were changes all throughout the beta regarding the retail release of the game, ranging from different enemy types, weapons, and engine-based updates, like the physics calculations, sound and movement and player inputs, although minuscule in size, is largely trumped by the contrast in the story of the beta compared to the retail release. The story, although quite similar in overall path of the retail release, is the main part of the Half-Life 2 beta, which was drastically changed, as well as the setting, themes, and overall vibe.
In summing up, it's the vibe and, no, that's it, it's the vibe.
The darker, grittier version of the story is not only seen by the different colour palette and how the beta relies on dark greens and browns which relate to the pollution and dystopia future themes, but also in the architecture. In the retail version of the game, the architecture is largely Eastern European, while the beta, the architecture is reminiscent of inspirations such as 1989 Gotham in Batman and 1985 Brazil. It represents a dystopian Northern American architecture style with large skyscrapers and the Combine latching onto the buildings like parasites and injecting their futuristic power through forcefully implementing things such as a large television and surveillance center guarded by Metro Police, which was replaced with big screens in the final version, which appeals to a more futuristic and less nihilistic dystopian view of the original game. The story in the beta was much darker and held no punches, such as in the intro to the game where the famous train ride and the G-Man speech takes place. In the beta version there are multiple additions which were implemented, but one of the final ones was where Gordon, the main character who was also mute, would watch the entirety of the 7-hour war unfold in front of his eyes in a sped up way, making the normal green hills turn into dark, destroyed deserts. Another large change is that during the intro train ride, Gordon would see the new and the old city, as there was no City 17, which is the one that's in the final version of the game. This change was much better as it represented the Combine as a parasitic alien army which latched onto whatever humanity was left in the world, aka City 17, implementing their own twisted surveillance into the world. Having two separate cities would be too confusing and make no sense from the Combine's point of view as they travel to Earth for the natural resources and things not present in their home's galaxy, so destroying and creating a new city would not make sense when a civilization is already present. Gordon would also have to wear a gas mask throughout the game, and through cut voice lines and levels we learnt that the Combine has been draining the Earth's oxygen supply, seen in the air exchange mod most prevalently. It is also stated that the game is literally and figuratively dark, taking place mostly at evening or night. Radiation Hazard 2020. Soon after the intro, Gordon would make his way through the industrial section of the game where he would see child slave labor, which was a hard cut from the game early on, most likely to the fear of backlash, and it also is a bit too depressing. He would go through factories and other locations which contrasts that of the apartment section of the retail version of the game. From there the game would be slightly different, but more or less pan out in a similar way to the retail version of the game, with modifications of characters, names, and voice actors, most predominantly Breen, who is now the console, a human-looking leader of the humans, not far from Breen in the retail version, except even less humanized. Then there is Odell, who became Odessa Cubbage, and Eli Vance, who was originally Eli Maxwell and another character, but they were mixed together, and the list goes on. There was also to be more vehicles, most likely replaced with the retail version, such as the jet ski, airboat, and digger, which was to be used in Ravenholm. Likely instead, the other usable vehicles were recycled to the crane during the antline part of the beach map, as so there was another playable vehicle other than the airboat and buggy. Half-Life Fandom 2022. There are many other parts of the game that were cut or recycled or even simply reworked, such as Ravenholm, taking place before reaching Eli's lab, which would have created a steep learning curve for players. A Ichthyosaur was to be used during this period of the game, which is seen in the strange map Ichthyosaur. A great video which was created by Radiation Hazard goes into even more depth about the Half-Life 2 beta story and its major changes. Conclusion. Through all the changes of the game, from recycling and reworking things such as the changing of names of pivotal characters and changing the level sequences, like with Ravenholm, to completely different architecture and atmosphere of City 17 and the entire game, with it taking place in North America with the air exchange also taking place. All of this was a massive change and is undoubtedly completely different from the retail European-based style of the game. If anything, the 2003 hack could be seen as a blessing in disguise, because without it we may have never gotten the retail edition that is critically acclaimed to this day, and Steam and Valve as a company might not have been as influential and successful as they are today. What are your thoughts? Do you think Genbei is a hero or a villain, considering he cost Valve millions of dollars for the stolen source code, but allowed the public to have a glimpse of the development of this massively influential game? If you believe Genbei is a villain, did he receive a harsh enough sentence? If you want to give Half-Life 2 Beta a try for yourself, there will be a link in the description where you can download it for free, and you can make a decision for yourself whether you prefer it over the retail version. Thank you for watching.